Honourable Leanne Dale-Seal.
I rise to support the notice of motion and to welcome the two appointments to the new Electoral Commission. The Honourable Justice Sir Hugh Williams is more than qualified to continue the role under the new electoral framework that he commenced in September last year under the old framework. Justice Williams brings a depth of experience to the role which will be welcome as the Parliament beds in new electoral finance laws and conducts, as I think it will have to do, an in-depth independent review of MMP after the referendum survives the attempts of those determined to remove proportional representation from our electoral landscape. It is for this reason in particular that I welcome Justice Williams' appointment. If you actually reflect back to the Royal Commission on the electoral system, that was the precursor to the change to our electoral system, producing the MMP system. It was a judge who chaired that Royal Commission, Justice Wallace. And I think that it is fitting and appropriate that a judge will lead this all-important review designed to mitigate some of the unintended consequences of the system of MMP chosen by the people of New Zealand by referendum in 1993. I regret that such an independent process was not provided for in the original legislation when we changed to MMP. And the reason that I regret that is that the select committee process that was provided for alternatively in the alternative was, although chaired by the Speaker of the day, it actually didn't have that degree of separation or distance from this place that such a review actually required. So I welcome the appointment of a judge to this most senior position within our electoral framework. Robert Pedden, of course, has been a source of excellent advice and support across governments and across parliaments, and he is in fact one of the advisors currently to the electoral select committee that I have the pleasure of serving on, the temporary committee that's been set up to deal with two pieces of legislation, electoral law funding, finance reform, and also the issue of the referendum itself. And, of course, also some of the parliamentary service rules which have been referred to us in the Parliamentary Services Commission Bill. He is extremely practised and he has an excellent knowledge of the law, as well as a very practical understanding of how the law works for people who are candidates, for people who are concerned about the activities of candidates, and political parties, obviously members of the public as well. And I think he's performed an excellent role in terms of the education of the and the standing that he has in the community in terms of ensuring that these things are addressed in a proper way. Now, and I think it is important to remember that people's reputations can stand and fall when falling foul of electoral rules, deliberate or not, and I do recall occasions in the past where individuals have been found guilty of corrupt practices, because that's the language in the legislation, even though it was not a genuine, it was not a deliberate fraud on the system or an attempt to skirt around the rules, but in fact I think in one case that I recall was simply the failure to calculate GST in the amount that had been spent. And it was interesting because the National Party did precisely that, but it was over television advertising and couldn't be done over for a corrupt practice, which just shows you that one size does not fit all as far as the law is concerned. But that is why someone of Mr Pedden's integrity is required to fulfil this role, and I fully support his appointment. I do look forward to the government completing its consultation so we can see a deputy chair appointed in the not too distant future. We have been consulted ourselves, and I presume that other parties are being consulted on who that might be, and if that does turn out to be who I understand it will be, then we will be very pleased with that appointment as well. I understand, as the Minister has confirmed tonight, that the appointment of these two members of the Electoral Commission is to meet the needs of the impending by-election occasioned by the departure of the Honourable Luamanuval Winnie-Laban. And I just thought it would be appropriate to acknowledge her role model status as an effective minister who I worked with particularly closely as Minister of Women's Affairs on economic development issues for Pacifica women. So I wanted to place that on record, and how sad we are to see her go, but in many respects where she is going, she will be able to continue the very good work that she started on behalf of Pacifica women in particular, and I wish her all the very best for the future. Mr. Speaker, the last thing that I thought that I would mention, and I did toss up as to whether I should mention it in the context of this discussion, but given that the need to appoint members of the Commission now because of the impending by-election and to have things up and running for the 1st of October, I should mention, I don't like mentioning the fact that there are brain-dead bloggers out there in cyberspace who say terrible things about people that simply are not true. Simply are not true. And the one that I don't even like to mention the fact that I'm going to mention whale oil, because I do not ever read his site. I don't. But the only reason that I am aware of what he has written on his site, which is entirely relevant to these appointments, the only reason that I'm aware is because I had the chair of my electorate committee send me an email saying, "Tell me you're not leaving." And I immediately responded to her that where did she get this information from? It came from a very unreliable source. We think Aaron Gilmore was the real source of the information, and that's just wishful thinking on his part. And so I want to place on record that I am not about to cause a by-election. I am nominating to be re-selected as the candidate for Christchurch East. I have already submitted my nomination form to the Labour Party. It has been received, and I have a letter confirming the receipt of that nomination. I have not been overseas in the last few weeks. I am not actually applying for a job overseas, and I just think that somebody is going to have to get over the fact that they are standing in a seat that is going to return a Labour MP on a basis that I feel honoured to be able to serve that electorate. And I believe that I serve that electorate well, and I look forward to continuing to serve them in the future. Mr. Speaker, I support the notice of motion.
Very good.
Being no more bidders for Rahui Kata.